Hi! Hello everybody! This is my November reading wrap up. Yeah, let's get into it. The first book I don't own, I listened to the audiobook of it, and that was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. I've read the first in this novella series. I read it I think maybe 2-3 years ago, and I did enjoy it. They're quite short, you know, they take 4 hours or something to listen to. Every Heart is the Doorway, that's what it was called. And I did enjoy it then, not that much, and I definitely knew I wasn't going to keep going with the series. But I did love the character of Jack in the book, and I have known for a while that Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is like a prequel, sequel, whatever, followed her and her sister, and so I kind of vaguely wanted to check it out. And then, you know, I wanted to read something a bit Halloween-y. I think I started it on the 31st of October, but I didn't finish it until November, and November 1st or something. So yeah, I sort of read it for that. I didn't find it particularly interesting. It was nice to read about a queer 14-year-old, and I still like Jack. I think she's cool. Glad I didn't spend money on it, and I won't be reading any more of the series. I'm pretty sure it's fine, because I think the problem is you know what's going to happen. So I knew what was going to happen because they have to appear in Every Heart a Doorway or whatever, so there's no kind of suspense, but it's sort of relying on a thrilling sense of unease. But that unease is completely disrupted when you know the two main characters are gonna survive. Then the next thing I finished was The Lives of Christopher Chant by Diana Wynne Jones, which is the second, I'm pretty sure, in the Chrestomanci series, and it follows a boy named Christopher. He has 9 lives, and it's kind of just about that. It starts basically where he has these dreams where he can go to the place in between and travel between worlds and go visit places, and he can bring things back from his dreams. He's a very lonely child. His parents kind of hate each other, and then they also kind of neglect him, really, so he's just pretty lonely. In terms of enjoyment, I enjoyed some of it. Yes, now I'm remembering. So near the end there's some encounters with people from a different world, and also kind of throughout, really, actually, there's this one character who's from a specific different world, and there's definitely some orientalizing vibes going on there. And then also yeah, at the end there's a lot of language, and yeah, this meeting with these different sort of elves, and they're just described in a really racist language. And filming this year is literally just a fight against, it's just me against winter, you know, fists cuffs. Right, I have no idea where I was because I had to answer the door. So yeah, that just put a really bad taste in my mouth. I do have a bunch of other books in the same series, but not about the same person, or at least they might be about the same person but at a different stage of their lives. I think that's probably it, because Charmed Life, the first one I read last month, that one is 25 years in the future of this one, so this is going backwards in time. And obviously, like I said before, I'm sort of reading these because I'm looking for some kind of Harry Potter type childish nostalgia-y type feelings, and obviously I don't get nostalgia because I never read them first, but you know, sometimes you can read a book that gives you that. And in fact, the next book I read did give me some of those vibes, and that was Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. And this follows Morrigan Crow, who is a cursed child, which means she's doomed to die on her 12th birthday, and is also the cause of all sorts of different terrible things happening in her community and the world at large. And it's about her and what happens when a man called Jupiter North comes by to sweep her away into a different land, and you know, her adventures. So you know, it does have absolute Harry Potter vibes, but I think it does being an abused child better than Harry Potter, actually, or at least yeah, I would agree with myself. There are some issues I had with it, especially the way, so there's a kind of theme within it that's about immigration and prejudice against immigrants, and I think that's a great thing to explore in a kid's book. But Morrigan Crow is white, and it felt very weird to be this is a fantasy world, let's sort of de-erase the issue of xenophobia completely, and you know, have this white child as the kind of epitome of people mistreating and oppressing her because she's an immigrant. So I didn't like that particularly. And then there were definitely also a couple other instances where language I didn't like, but generally I found it to be a really creative and interesting and just fun book to read, and I loved Morrigan Crow as a main character. I definitely relate. Also, she's basically a goth, which is great fun. And I'm not a goth, I'm just a goth appreciator, you know? Yeah, it's just very sweet, and it was just a lot of fun to listen to. It tugged at my heartstrings, and there were multiple times when I was oh, Morrigan, because she was just being sad and also so sweet and also a big mood still as the cursed child of the family. Yeah, no, it was really lovely to read. The next book I read was Blue Ticket by Sophie McIntosh, which is a book I spoke about in my mid-year book freakout tag as one I wanted to read because it came out this year. I'm glad I did. My friend actually sent me this copy, which is really nice of her. Also, it has quite nice sky blue cloudy end pages. Blue Ticket is set in a world where when you start menstruating, you get given a ticket, and if it's a blue ticket, it means you aren't gonna become a mother and have kids, and if you get a white ticket, that's what you do, that's your role. The people who get blue tickets, they're given like contraceptives, whatever like coils and things like that stop pregnancy and things, you know, so it's very like non-health autonomy and like very intense. And then this follows a blue ticket woman called Kala who starts to know that she wants to have a baby, and it's about that, about her experience. I found it... So Sophie McIntosh wrote one of my favourite books, The Water Cure, and so, you know, I sort of had high hopes, but I also knew that it probably wasn't going to be as good as that, because like that book was like just, it was about my body, which was just a weird and surreal and amazing experience in terms of reading a book. And I guess now that I've spoken about it so much, I probably should reread it just to see if it's still true. Although I guess like if it's not true, that's kind of interesting now too in terms of my body. But anyway, so I sort of knew it wasn't going to be quite the same, so I was prepared not to like it 100%. But like, I think I am kind of disappointed in it. I felt like the premise was just not fleshed out enough. Like there was hardly any world building, you just kind of dive into it, and there needed to be a bit more because the stakes were just a bit confusing. And whereas the kind of like ambiguous vagueness of the world building in The Water Cure worked, because you got key details but you also didn't, but that thematically worked with the novel because it's very much a novel about like not letting people see and like hiding things and secrets and what that does to people. Whereas this is sort of a bit different. I mean, I guess there is the same level of kind of like hiding stuff and people just hiding what people can actually do for themselves. So I definitely did struggle with it. I think it's written pretty well. I know I've said on this channel all the time, but like I'm interested in like motherhood and pregnancy, and so there is representation of that. Specifically, I would say there's much more representation of like pregnancy and the experience of becoming and being pregnant and like gestating a baby and what that experience is. I loved the sort of, there's like a mid-section in the book where something happens, and I loved that part. I thought it was really good. I also thought it was pretty sexy, and like just I wish that were me in the middle of this book. There's just like a lot of sort of caring between people and through people, and just like a community gestating together, and then that sort of doesn't happen anymore, and it goes back to being this like very individualistic account. Do I say that a lot? I feel like I say that a lot, which like, yeah, it's fine, but also not so enjoyable for me personally. When it started to pick up, I was like, oh okay, it just had like a bit of a bad beginning, a bit too vague, and now it's gonna get good for the rest of it. But it didn't. It just kind of peaked and then it came back down. And I think, you know, I would also say that as well, like in the legacy of like Margaret Atwood and other sort of white women feminist writers who want to tackle the way that women are relied on for particular forms of reproductive work and, you know, labour, and also even, I mean, yeah, this the core as well of this is that like this is about like reproductive justice. It's about like who gets to give birth and who doesn't. But the thing is, it completely deraces that experience, which like it's a racialized experience. People who are forced to be like sterilized and all of these horrible things that take away everybody's bodily autonomy, and even just like the development of contraception that is very much a racialized and classed thing. And, you know, so it just felt weird that like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the main character is described as pale as white. As far as I'm aware, like maybe I just wasn't reading close enough, but I'm pretty sure. So in some ways it worked, in a lot of ways it didn't, and yeah, but I am really glad I got to it, and thank you so much, Kate, for sending it to me. I really appreciate it. So the next book I finally finished, which I think I started reading quite a long time ago, is Girls Against God by Jenny Val, which is a difficult book to talk about and sum up. Definitely kind of experimental and weird. It's very much in the vein of kind of like art history combining with novels, and also like techno, witchcraft, black metal, satanist, film studies. Maybe that's quite a good sum up, I don't know. Maybe also add feminist in there too. Queer feminist. I really like the flaps on this book, it's really lovely. It's sort of described as a horror book. There's definitely some sort of like body horror-y, gross type stuff that goes on in here. I'm not really sure what I was expecting. I don't think it was what I was expecting, but I don't think you could really like expect a book like this. It sort of flips around, and the main character is from the south of Norway, and she hates God, and she's sort of trying to get away from and also move closer to God, and also hating. And yeah, you know, it's interesting. One thing that I sort of struggled with, and I don't know if it's about like translation, and because this was originally written in Norwegian. Oh, I should say the translator's name because I'm shit at that. It was translated by Marjam Idris. It might be a translation thing, and I would be really interested to know other people's thoughts about it. But basically, especially at the beginning, there's a lot of kind of talk about, so in the vein of like black metal. I mean, I don't really know that much about black metal, but so it sort of starts in the 1990s when the narrator is the gloomiest child queen in 1990, which I love. So there's a lot of talk about like blackness and black, yeah, like the black of hating and dyeing your hair black and wearing black clothes and like black metal, and I mean also music in generally, like there is a really nice way that this talks about bands. But so I found that, I guess, a bit challenging and sort of like maybe a bit uncomfortable. I wasn't entirely sure. Yeah, I wasn't really sure how I felt about that and how maybe other people would feel about that, and also how, because obviously black as a colour, like the connotations of the colour also are like mapped onto black people and to, yeah, just like how people kind of interpret race, you know, like the classic of like white versus black. It's like, well, white is the good and black is the bad, and then, but like what does that mean for people who actually are black and who experience racism? You know, I don't think, I don't know. I don't know. If you've read this, please talk to me about it. How did you feel? Like, what did you think about it? Tell me. If you don't tell me, then I'm gonna cry. The next book I read was this YA book, A World Between Us by Lydia Sison, which I just, it has such a nice cover. I love it. I just love the colour scheme. I just, the vibes. So this is set in about, well, it starts in 1936, and it's about a girl called, what's her name? Felix, who is training to be a nurse / a nurse, and she meets a boy called Nat, has this weird connection with him, suddenly becomes a communist who's not really a communist at all, and then she meets him just before he's going to Spain. He's going to Spain to fight for the Republicans and to, as Lydia Sison says, defend democracy, and she follows him basically and becomes a nurse and helps out in that capacity. This book definitely does have promise, and the reason I was interested in reading it, I got this ages and ages ago and I didn't get around to it because it was a YA book for a while. I was just like, I'm never reading those ever again. But I kept it because Spanish Civil War, kind of interesting, you know, that it's definitely part of like leftist radical history, and yeah, I don't know that much about it. I didn't before then. I've listened to a bunch of podcasts since, but like a bunch. I've listened to like 2 podcasts. Basically, like this book has good premise. It's ruined by 2 main things, heterosexuality and liberalism, and maybe they kind of go together, to be honest. So Nat, the love interest who kind of sparks Felix's interest to go, they meet for like 5 minutes or something at the Battle of Cable Street, which is a great day for anti-fascism. And like the opening of the book is really strong, I think. Like I really liked how Felix comes to realise that the police are on the side of the fascists and they're like stopping anti-fascists from causing harm against them. But the promise of kind of like radical politics and an exploration of like belief and what makes people act and do things and fight, like literally pick up arms and fight, and you know also become a nurse. I mean, it's a devastating experience for both of the characters and for basically everybody in the war. There's just like a lot of like hardship. It's unbelievable in a lot of ways because it takes out any of that real fervent belief, because Felix doesn't really believe that. She is swept off her feet by Nat for a moment, and then she travels to Spain, and then she's kind of like stuck there, but like she doesn't say this or anything, but like, you know, why is she there? What does she believe? Like she sort of says she's like fighting against Franco, and she sees it as like a wider thing of like, if Franco wins in Spain, he'll win in the rest of Europe. But I think at the core of this book is that Lydia Sison thinks that people fought in the Spanish Civil War to save democracy, but people fought in the Spanish War in order to fight for communism and for anarchism and for their beliefs. They didn't fight just to save a nebulous concept of justice. They fought for material improvement and gain, and for community and communization, and for just like the end of pain, the end of capitalist exploitation. I mean, Spain was in a very intense place before the war started. People were extremely mistreated, exploited badly. None of that is explored in here. She's much more interested in like romanticizing the international supporter who comes to help the war effort, rather than any of the Spanish people who were already there and who were like already political or who were working class and who were like fighting. Nat is Jewish and he's from the East End, and so that's sort of why he's there at Cable Street. I was like, oh, this could be really interesting, and like I'd like to hear about like him and his faith and also his beliefs and stuff, like as in his faith and how it intersects with his political beliefs. But like that doesn't really happen either. Also, like on a leftist thing, like he's in the Youth Communist League, which really isn't good, I'm pretty sure nowadays. I think they're kind of Trotskyites, aren't they? But anyway, and then there's like a love cone as well in this, and like it's just really obvious first of all what's going to happen, and then it's also just like boring. It could be good. It wasn't. That's the too long didn't watch this. God, okay, I've only got 2 more books, so, and one of them I don't think I'll talk about much, so the next book I read was The Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West. I read it in like a night. Yeah, it's pretty short and the text is really large. So it was published in 1918, and it just basically is literally what the title says. There are 2 women, Kitty and Jenny, who is the narrator, and Kitty is the wife of a soldier who's returning, whose name is Chris. Kitty is Chris's wife, and it's just about sort of like the consequences of his return home, because he returns home with amnesia, where he thinks it's 15 years in the past when he was in love with a woman called Margaret Allington. It's just kind of about that. It's about trauma and it's about unrequited love. I think it's like latently bisexual. Jenny is like very obviously in love with Chris, and also Margaret, ultimately, in my opinion. Yeah, and so it's just kind of about that. It's very intense and weird. It's about grief. It's about it is about trauma, but the way that trauma changes everything, and like things cannot go back to normal when like it's interesting in that capacity. And I found that it was written really well. It has sometimes happened that painters who have kept close enough to earth to see a heavenly vision have made pictures of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin, which do indeed show women who could bring God into the world by the passion of their motherhood. Holy shit, Rebecca! I love this cover. I love this picture. The main criticism I guess I have of it is that like it's just so classist. So we're in Jenny's head, and I don't know how much like Rebecca West is sort of like projecting her own kind of views and assumptions, but like either way it's very uncomfortable to read. Jenny has a lot of really negative responses to Margaret at first, and also kind of continuously, to be honest, and there are just like lots of comments that were not nice or good. The last book I read, well I finished, was Jean Rhys's White Sargassy, which I started literally months ago, but I stopped reading it because I was in a section where it's Rochester talking, and I fucking hate him. Oh my fucking god. But I was just like, I just have to get through it, like I have to grit my teeth and get through it. But actually there were more. Like I thought the rest of the book was just going to be his perspective, but it wasn't. I think this book struggles with and also benefits deeply from a weird image thing that has happened, where I think a lot of people think Jean Rhys is a woman of colour when she wasn't. She was a white woman who was brought up in Dominica, I think, and then went to England and to Paris. I don't think this book is as post-colonial as the way that it's represented. I think it is kind of interesting. I really did not enjoy reading it, basically. I thought the last section of the book was the best part. But yeah, so I've read it. I'm glad I finished it. This is actually my mum's copy, so that's good. And my camera is dying, so it's almost perfect time for me to shut the fuck up. Those are the books that I read in November. Hopefully I'll read a bunch more. Great, well thank you so much for watching however long this video is. I hope it's interesting. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on any of these books, if you've read them, or if you want to read them, or if you hate them. Have a lovely day, and I will talk to you in another video at another time. Bye!